Cadet Chen, do you have any idea how many regulations you violated? Zara Chen slouched deeper into the uncomfortable plasteel chair, wondering if Admiral Braxton's office had been specifically designed to maximize discomfort. The chair was probably a psychological warfare experiment gone wrong. She made a mental note to hack into the procurement database later and check. 17, sir, she offered helpfully, unable to keep the corner of her mouth from twitching upward. Though Regulation 34.B.7 is really more of a guideline than a 23. Admiral Braxton's mustache quivered with barely contained fury. It reminded Zara of her cat's tail right before pouncing on an unsuspecting drawer string. You reprogrammed our most advanced combat simulation to play something called Space Invaders. In my defense, sir, the original code was horrifically outdated. I mean, who still uses Kepler VI architecture? It's like trying to defend Earth with a toaster. Zara straightened up, warming to her topic. Besides, my version had much better graphics, and the aliens were anatomically accurate. The Admiral's face achieved an impressive new shade of purple. Cadet, the Craxi Diplomatic Corps was visiting that day. Do you have any idea? Oh, they loved it, Zara brightened. Ambassador Zith Tal said it was the most accurate representation of their first fleet he'd ever seen, though he did mention their ships are more of a mauve color than purple. A vein pulsed dangerously in Braxton's forehead. The Earth Cyber Defense Academy exists to protect humanity from threats, not to turn our most sophisticated military hardware into ancient entertainment systems. Technically, sir, by demonstrating the vulnerabilities in our systems, I was protecting. A priority alert chose that moment to flash across every screen in the office, its urgent red glow reflecting off the Admiral's already colorful complexion. Zara's eyes instantly locked onto the scrolling data, her smile fading as she processed the information. Sir, she said, all trace of humor gone. You need to see this. Admiral Braxton was already reading, his face draining of color. At the edge of the solar system, something massive had just dropped out of hyperspace, something that made every sensor in the Kuiper belt start screaming. The Craxi, he breathed. But they're supposed to be in peace talks. Zara's fingers flew across her neural interface, pulling up additional data streams. Sir, the energy signature. I've never seen anything like it. It's like they've weaponized a small sun. The Admiral's next words were cut off by another alert. This one made Zara's blood run cold. The massive object was moving, accelerating toward the inner planets with impossible speed. Get me Earth Command, Braxton barked at his AI assistant, and Cadet. Sir, your disciplinary hearing will have to wait. I need you to analyze that weapon's signature. Find me something we can use. As Zara sprinted from the office, she couldn't help but think that if they survived this, she was definitely updating her resume to include saved from court-martial by alien invasion. It would make a great conversation starter at job interviews. Assuming, of course, there was still a planet left to have job interviews on. The thought sobered her as she reached her workstation, fingers already dancing across holographic keyboards. The preliminary data was terrifying. Whatever the Craxi had built, it made every weapon in Earth's arsenal look like a child's science project. But as streams of alien code began flowing across her screens, Zara felt the familiar thrill of a challenge rising in her chest. After all, she'd already hacked one alien-inspired system this week. What was one more? The holographic projection of Commander Vex Thor loomed over the war room, his crystalline exoskeleton gleaming with what Zara thought was excessive theatrical lighting. She made a mental note. Apparently megalomaniacal aliens had the same flair for dramatic presentation as every supervillain in human history. And so, primitive species Vex Thor was saying, mandibles clicking in what the xenologist claimed was amusement. You have precisely 6 Earth rotations to submit to Craxi authority, or face immediate extinction. We are generous in our mercy. Generous like a loan shark with a poetry habit, Zara muttered from her corner workstation, earning a sharp look from General Hastings. She returned her attention to her screens, but kept one ear on the proceedings. The military brass was doing what military brass did best, arguing about protocol, while an alien superweapon hurtled toward Earth. We can't possibly evacuate the major cities in 6 days, someone was saying. Our fleet is still 3 weeks out from Neptune, said someone else. Perhaps if we implemented the Omega Protocol. Absolutely not. The civilian casualties would be. Zara tuned them out, focusing on the streams of data flowing through her neural interface. She'd been running continuous analysis on the weapon's energy signature for the past 18 hours, subsisting on synthetic caffeine and spite. There was something about the code structure, something maddeningly familiar. Cadet Chen, General Hastings's voice cracked like a whip. Report. What have you found? Zara blinked, realizing the room had fallen silent. 24 of Earth's highest-ranking military officers were staring at her. No pressure. Well, sir, she began, I've been analyzing the weapon's base code structure, and there's something odd about the... Skip the technical babble, Hastings interrupted. Can we stop it? Not. Exactly, Zara pulled up a holographic display. But look at this pattern in the auxiliary systems. It's almost like they're using an adapted version of... Useless, Colonel Wright cut in. We need solutions, not computer science lectures. General, I suggest we focus on the evacuation protocols. Zara felt her face flush. Sir, if you'd just let me finish. That will be all. Cadet Hastings dismissed her with a wave. Return to your analysis. Colonel, about those protocols. Zara slumped back in her chair, frustration burning in her chest. The pattern was there, clear as day to anyone who bothered to look. The Craxi weapons code structure was eerily similar to the baseline architecture she'd found in the Academy's combat simulators. The same simulators she'd been reprimanded for hacking. She pulled up her old hack logs, comparing them to the weapon's signature. The similarities were undeniable. Somehow, the Craxi had based their superweapons control systems on the same ancient human coding principles that Earth's military still used. It was like finding out that a Death Star ran on Windows 95. A new alert flashed across her screen. The weapon had crossed Neptune's orbit, its massive form now visible to Earth's deep space telescopes. The image made Zara's breath catch. It looked like someone had taken a small moon, covered it in chrome, and attached enough energy projectors to power a small galaxy. Casualties estimated at 40% in the first wave, someone was saying. Acceptable losses if we can maintain military control of. Zara's fingers flew across her keyboards, digging deeper into the weapon's code. If she was right, and she knew she was right, there was a vulnerability here. The same kind of vulnerability she'd exploited to turn the Academy's simulations into a retro gaming system. But this time, instead of space invaders, she'd be playing with something that could vaporize continents. Her neural interface pinged with a private message. It was from Admiral Braxton Chen. Tell me you're not thinking what I think you're thinking. She sent back a single emoji. That's what I was afraid of, came the reply. Don't do anything stupid. That's an order. Zara looked up at the hologram of Commander Vex Thor, still droning on about the superiority of Craxi civilization, then at the weapon's image, now larger on the displays. Finally at the room full of officers planning how many millions of deaths would be acceptable. She cracked her knuckles and began to type. Sorry, sir, she murmured. But stupid is kind of my specialty. The Cyber Defense Academy's sub-basement wasn't exactly designed for comfort, but Zara had made it her own. Empty caffeine capsules littered her workstation, and the soft blue glow of holographic displays cast dancing shadows on the walls. The air hummed with the sound of quantum processors working overtime. You're going to get caught, her AI assistant Max warned. Only if you snitch on me, Zara replied, fingers dancing across virtual keyboards. Besides, I've gotten pretty good at not getting caught. Well, mostly. As she worked, her mind drifted back to her grandmother's apartment in New Singapore, 15 years ago. She could still smell the synthetic jasmine tea and hear the ancient cooling unit rattling in the window. Remember, Xiao Long, her grandmother would say, code is like calligraphy. Each line must flow into the next. But unlike calligraphy, she'd wink here, if you make a mistake, you can always hit delete. Grandmother Chen had been one of the original architects of Earth's cyber defense systems. She'd also been, though few knew it, one of the most successful black hat hackers of the mid-21st century. To build good walls, she'd say, you must first learn how to climb them. A proximity alert jolted Zara back to the present. The Craxi weapon had just passed Jupiter's orbit. Speaking of good walls, she muttered, diving back into the code. The weapon's capabilities were becoming clearer with each passing hour, and they were terrifying. The Craxi had essentially built a mobile star, contained within a massive crystalline lattice that could focus its energy into precise beams. It could reduce a planet to atoms, or surgically remove a single city, leaving everything around it untouched. But it was the control system that fascinated Zara. Beneath layers of alien encryption, she'd found something almost elegant in its familiarity. Max, pull up the recording of Commander Vex Thor's last transmission. The holographic image flickered to life. Vex Thor's crystalline exoskeleton caught the light dramatically as he gestured with 4 of his 6 arms. ... And know this, humans. The Stellar Forge is merely the first of our great works. Your resistance is not just futile, it is mathematically insignificant. Zara studied his movements, noting how his secondary arms twitched when he mentioned the weapon. Pause. Enhance the background, Sector 7. Behind Vex Thor, barely visible, was a control interface. The symbols were Craxi, but the structure. No way, Zara breathed. They didn't. But they had. The Craxi, for all their supposed superiority, had based their control systems on code stolen from humans decades ago. Probably from the first contact protocols, when Earth systems had been more accessible. Your grandmother would find this hilarious, Max observed. Oh, she'd be cackling, Zara agreed. They basically copied her homework and didn't even bother to change the variable names. She pulled up another window, this one showing her progress on the exploit. It was beautiful, really. The Craxi had taken human code and enhanced it, made it more efficient, more powerful. But they'd kept the same basic architecture. The same vulnerabilities. Systems aren't broken by brute force, her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. They're broken by understanding. Find the pattern, find the flaw. A new alert flashed across her screens. Above, in the war room, the generals were panicking. The weapon, the Stellar Forge, as Vex Thor had called it, was accelerating. 4 days left, not 6. Zara's neural interface pinged with a message from Admiral Braxton, whatever you're doing down there, do it faster. She glanced at the main display, where a live feed showed the Stellar Forge. It dominated the screen now, its crystalline surface refracting light from Jupiter in ways that would have been beautiful if they weren't so terrifying. Energy readings were off the charts, and growing. Commander Vex Thor's voice came through the emergency channels, dripping with smug superiority. Perhaps we were too generous with our timeline. Humans clearly lack the capacity to appreciate the honor of a graceful surrender. We will now demonstrate the consequence of your inefficient decision-making process. Oh, shut up, Zara muttered, typing faster. Max, run quantum simulation series Delta through Lambda. I need to know if this will work before I... Cadet Chen, General Hastings' voice boomed through her comm. Report to the war room immediately. We're implementing the Omega Protocol. Zara's blood ran cold. The Omega Protocol was a last resort nuclear response. It would kill millions, maybe billions, and still probably wouldn't stop the Stellar Forge. She looked at her code, then at the simulation results Max was processing. It wasn't ready. It needed at least 6 more hours of testing. They had maybe 2. Sometimes her grandmother had told her on her deathbed, you have to hit run before you're ready. Trust your instincts, Xiao Long. They're usually right. Zara took a deep breath and reached for the neural interface uplink. Sorry, General, she said to the empty room, but I'm about to be really busy. She hit run. Above, in the war room, alarms began to blare. Unauthorized access detected. The Stellar Forge's systems blared in harsh Craxi script across Zara's neural interface. Countermeasures engaged. Yeah, Zara muttered, her fingers flying across virtual keyboards while her mind dove through layers of alien code. That's what the Academy's system said too, right before I made them play Pong. Above, chaos reigned in the war room. The stellar forge had begun its firing sequence, its crystalline surface blazing with contained stellar energy. Earth's military leaders were shouting about evacuation orders and nuclear launches. None of them had noticed that one of their cadets' neural signatures had just vanished from the network. Because Zara wasn't on Earth's networks anymore. She was inside the forge. Intruder, a new presence, slammed into her virtual consciousness, a Craxi cybersecurity team. Their code forms manifested as crystalline warriors in the virtual space. You dare infiltrate the greatest weapon ever conceived. Greatest Zara's avatar, a glowing dragon. Because if you're going to commit high treason, you might as well look cool doing it coiled through the forge's systems. Please. I've seen better code in a children's gaming rig. She struck at the first firewall, using her grandmother's old exploits with new twists. The Craxi defenders shattered, reconstructing themselves almost instantly, but not before she'd slipped deeper into the system. On her physical screens, Max displayed the weapon's status: firing sequence 87% complete. Chen, Admiral Braxton's voice crackled through her last remaining Earth link. The evacuation order was not optional. She muted him. The virtual space around her blazed with alien counter-intrusions, each more sophisticated than the last. The Craxi might have borrowed Earth's base code, but they'd built on it in ways that would have made her grandmother whistle in appreciation. Your efforts are futile, a new voice boomed through the system. Commander Vex Thor's code form manifested before her, a towering crystalline monstrosity. Though I admit, your species continues to surprise with its capacity for inconvenience. Awe. Thanks, Zara's dragon form spiraled around a particularly nasty virus cluster, reprogramming it on the fly. We aim to please. Speaking of aiming, she lashed out with a code sequence that briefly inverted the forge's targeting arrays. Vex Thor's avatar actually stumbled. What? What is this? This is impossible. You know what your biggest mistake was? Zara dove deeper, approaching the forge's core systems. Besides the whole threatening Earth thing, she batted aside 3 more security protocols. You stole our homework and didn't even bother to check whose homework it was. Warning klaxons blared in real space. The stellar forge's crystal surface was pulsing erratically now, its carefully controlled energies fluctuating. Firing sequence 92% complete. Security protocol Omega. Vex Thor roared. Destroy this intrusion. The virtual space filled with elite Craxi programmers, their code forms gleaming like faceted diamonds. They struck at Zara from all directions, their attacks so complex they made her neural interface smoke. But Zara had been ready for this. She'd spent 18 hours studying their code. More importantly, she'd spent 15 years learning from the woman who'd written the original systems they'd stolen. Fun fact, she said, unleashing her grandmother's final, never published exploit with her own modifications. The programmer you copied this from? She was my grandmother, and she taught me all her tricks. The elite programmer's attacks suddenly stuttered as their own code turned against them. Zara's dragon form grew, incorporating their fragmented protocols into itself. No, Vex Thor's avatar was actually backing away now. This is not possible. The Stellar Forge is perfect. It is. Running unmodified human code from 2045, Zara finished. Really should have checked those attribution notes. Firing sequence 98% complete. Zara struck. Her grandmother's exploit, combined with her own innovations, tore through the Forge's final defenses like quantum lightning. She reached the core systems just as the weapon reached firing position. In real space, the Stellar Forge's surface went dark. Then, slowly, it began to turn toward the Craxi fleet. What have you done? Vex Thor's voice had lost its smugness, replaced by something close to fear. Let's call it Zara's dragon form coiled triumphantly through the conquered systems, a lesson in proper code attribution. Firing sequence 99% complete. The war room erupted in chaos as every screen showed the impossible. The Stellar Forge, pride of the Craxi Empire, was rotating with ponderous grace to face its own fleet. By the first Crystal Commander, Vex Thor's hologram flickered as he stumbled backward. You cannot. Actually, Zara's voice rang through both real and virtual space as she materialized her own hologram in the war room, her neural interface letting her maintain control of the forge while addressing both Earth and Craxi leaders. I already did. Funny thing about superweapons, they're only super if they're pointing at someone else. The stellar forge's crystalline surface blazed with contained stellar fire, its targeting systems now locked firmly on the Craxi command ship. The same energy that would have reduced Earth to cosmic dust was now aimed at its creators. This is outrageous. Vex Thor's mandibles clicked furiously. You are merely a cadet, a trainee. I demand to speak to your superior officer. Admiral Braxton stepped forward, his mustache twitching with what might have been pride. Cadet Chen currently has command of your civilization's most powerful weapon. I believe that makes her your superior officer, Commander. Zara's fingers danced through the air as she adjusted the forge's power settings. Fun fact, I've got enough juice here to take out your entire fleet and most of your colony worlds in the Orion Arm. Want to see my targeting solutions? I made them pretty colors. A series of holographic projections appeared, showing exactly what the forge could do to Craxi space. Vex Thor's crystalline exoskeleton actually paled. You wouldn't, he breathed. Such destruction. You would be no better than someone who points a superweapon at an inhabited planet and demands surrender. Zara raised an eyebrow. Yeah, that would be pretty awful, wouldn't it? The war room had fallen silent. Earth's military leaders watched in stunned amazement as their most junior cadet faced down the commander of humanity's greatest threat. So here's what's going to happen, Zara continued, pulling up a neural interface window showing the forge's firing sequence. You're going to order your fleet to stand down. Then we're going to have a nice chat about respecting other species' intellectual property rights. And maybe, she grinned, you'll apologize to the nice humans you were planning to vaporize. Vex Thor's hologram drew itself up to its full height. The Craxi Empire does not apologize. We do not bow. We are the supreme. Zara's finger hovered over the virtual trigger. Want to test that theory? I've got the forge's targeting systems locked on your main crystal farming colonies. I hear those take centuries to grow back. For the first time in recorded history, a Craxi commander's voice trembled. You wouldn't. Try me. Zara's voice was steel wrapped in silk. I once rewrote my entire academy's grading system because a professor said my code was derivative. Do you really want to find out what I'll do when someone threatens my planet? The tension in the war room could have been cut with a quantum blade. Every eye was fixed on Vex Thor as the proud Craxi commander visibly wrestled with his options. Finally, his shoulders slumped. All 6 arms lowered in the traditional Craxi gesture of submission. And then, to the astonishment of everyone present, Commander Vex Thor, conqueror of 3 galaxies, terror of the Orion Arm, bent his crystalline form in a deep bow. The Craxi Empire, he ground out, ... surrenders to Cadet Chen of Earth. The cheer that erupted in the war room probably registered on seismic sensors. General Hastings was openly weeping. Colonel Wright had fainted. And Admiral Braxton's mustache was doing some kind of victory dance. Excellent choice, Zara said cheerfully. Max, start downloading all the forge's technical specifications. I think Earth's engineers would love to see how the Craxi improved on my grandmother's code. With proper attribution this time, of course. As the Craxi fleet began its withdrawal and Earth's celebrations began, Admiral Braxton approached Zara's still hovering hologram. Cadet Chen, he said gravely, about your disciplinary hearing. Yes, sir. She was still maintaining neural contact with the forge, just in case. Consider it cancelled. Though we need to talk about your new habit of commandeering superweapons. Zara's hologram grinned. Would you believe me if I said I only did it because the chair in your office was uncomfortable? The Admiral's mustache twitched again. Cadet. Sir. Shut up and accept your promotion. 6 months after what historians would call the Forge incident, Zara found herself back in Admiral Braxton's office. The chair was new, ergonomically designed, and actually comfortable. She suspected it wasn't a coincidence. The Craxi delegation is arriving next week, the Admiral said, his mustache significantly less agitated these days. They're bringing their top programmers for the Joint Cybersecurity Initiative. Let me guess. Zara leaned back in the luxurious chair. They specifically requested the cadet who hijacked their superweapon. Lieutenant Chen, he corrected with a slight smile. And yes, though I believe their exact words were the human who taught us humility. Through the office window, she could see the stellar forge in orbit, its crystalline surface now bearing both Earth and Craxi insignias. After extensive negotiations and some pointed reminders about who still had the override codes, it had been converted into a joint defense platform. Commander Vex Thor will be leading their delegation. Braxton continued. He seems eager to work with you again. Zara snorted. Amazing what having your superweapon turned against you can do for diplomatic relations. Her neural interface pinged with updates from Max about the Academy's new curriculum. She was teaching now advanced systems penetration and ethics. The course description included a footnote: no unauthorized modifications of training simulations permitted. Yes, this means you, Professor Chen. Your grandmother would be proud, Braxton said softly, though perhaps a bit concerned about the scale of your pranks these days. Please, Zara waved a hand. She would have done the exact same thing, though she probably would have made the forge play Tetris first, just to really rub it in. The Admiral shook his head, but he was smiling. You realize the irony, don't you? If you hadn't hacked those training simulations, I never would have recognized the code pattern in the forge. Zara finished. I know. Turns out being a disciplinary problem saved humanity. I put that on my new business cards. She stood, straightening her uniform. If that's all, sir, I have a class to teach. We're covering the proper attribution of borrowed code today. Her grin turned wicked. I invited some Craxi students to sit in. As she reached the door, Braxton called after her. Lieutenant. Yes, sir. Try not to start any interstellar incidents in class today. Zara's laugh echoed down the hallway. No promises, sir. But I'll try to keep any surrenders to a minimum. As she walked through the Academy's halls, past windows showing the gleaming forge in orbit, she couldn't help but smile. Somewhere, her grandmother was probably laughing her head off. After all, she'd always said that the best defense was a good offense. And nobody, Zara reflected with satisfaction, pulled off an offensive quite like a Chen.